The stories making headlines this hour. North Korea fires short-range rockets for the third time in a week, despite protests from Washington and Seoul that such provocative acts violate UN resolutions. South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se is determined to raise the issue of wartime sexual slavery by Japan at a UN meeting this week, as political leaders in Tokyo try to whitewash atrocities committed by imperialist Japan. President Vladimir Putin orders troops involved in the military exercise in western Russia back to base after East-West tensions over fears of war in Ukraine rattled financial markets. With these stories and more, next on Primetime News. Good evening to our viewers in Korea, and hello to those of you who are watching from around the world. It's Tuesday, March 4th here in Seoul. I am Yoo Ji-hye.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thank you so much for joining us. We begin this evening with North Korea's latest provocation. In less than a week, the communist state again fired off multiple short-range rockets into the East Sea.
Well, Pyongyang launched a total of 7 missiles, stepping up its apparent protest against the ongoing South Korea-U.S. joint military drills. Yoo Li-an has our top story.
At around 4:30 p.m. on Tuesday, North Korea fired 4 short-range projectiles using a multiple rocket launcher into the East Sea. This according to Seoul's defense ministry. These missiles have a range of about 150 kilometers. Immediately following reports of the short-range projectile launches, the defense ministry announced that North Korea had already fired 3 short-range missiles into the East Sea earlier Tuesday morning, bringing the total of missiles launched on Tuesday to 7. The ones fired in the morning flew about 55 kilometers. Defense Ministry spokesperson Kim Min-seok labeled Tuesday's launches as explicit acts of aggression against the ongoing joint South Korea-U.S. military drills, adding that they are keeping a close watch on the possibility of additional provocations. The North Korean regime fired 4 short-range missiles into its eastern waters last Thursday, and then 2 Scud-C short-range missiles on Monday. The sharp rise in the number of launches comes as North Korea has been stepping up its rhetoric. Pyongyang called out Washington earlier on Tuesday for deploying its nuclear-powered submarine to South Korea's southernmost port city of Busan as part of the joint military drills. North Korea's main internet-based propaganda website 우리 민족끼리 called the move a provocation for a nuclear war against the communist country. Yoo Li-an, Arirang News.
As South Korea readies itself for a possible reunification of the Korean peninsula, it is looking to Germany for lessons on bringing a divided nation together.
Our Hwang Sung-hee sat down with German economist Karl-Heinz Packe for his view on which steps Seoul should take.
German economist Karl-Heinz Packe, who is an expert on German unification, says giving North Koreans a clear economic perspective is key in preparing for the reunification of the Korean peninsula.
You know, Seoul is a city of 20 million, the whole metropolitan area of 20 million people, a thriving economy. So once the border is open, North Koreans will come in great numbers.
In an interview with Arirang News on Tuesday, Packe said the Koreas must begin by forming a currency union and transforming and privatizing the rundown North Korean industrial sector. This process cost Germany over $2 trillion. Although there are varying estimates, it's expected to cost Korea around $3.5 trillion. But Packe assures it will be money well spent.
First of all, North Korea has quite a supply of raw materials. And with all the trade links that South Korea has to Europe and America, I think there are all advantages you can think of to invest in Northern Korea.
But the outlook is not all rosy. With a reduced threat of war upon reunification of the two Koreas, there is the question of what will happen to the thousands of North Korean soldiers who represent nearly 40% of the population.
You will have high unemployment for a while. We did have very high unemployment in Eastern Germany for a very long time, and still the unemployment rate in Eastern Germany is higher than in Western Germany, even today. but that's the price to be paid.
Park says Germany experienced structural difficulties and suffered from low growth rates for a while. But despite the struggles, he agrees with South Korean President Park Geun-hye that a reunified Korea would have benefits for both sides.
So in your view, do you think reunification would be a bonanza for the two Koreas?
But we did have, as a consequence of unification, some major economic reforms. And today, Germany is one of the leading, the stability anchor in Europe. So the whole venture has been successful, and I would expect exactly the same in the case of Korea.
Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
The Korea's foreign minister is set to raise the issue of the Japanese military's use of sex slaves during World War II himself at the upcoming UN meeting this week, hinting at Seoul's seriousness about tackling the issue related to Japan's wartime atrocities. Our Kim Ji-yeon has the details.
South Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se will address the UN Human Rights Council this week to raise the issue of the so-called comfort women, or women forced into sexual slavery by the Japanese military during World War II. Seoul's foreign ministry said Tuesday Minister Yoon will give a speech in Geneva on Wednesday local time to convey the country's stance on the human rights issue. This is the first time since 2006 Seoul's top diplomat will attend a UN Human Rights Council session. Minister Yoon is expected to call on Japan to compensate the victims of its wartime program of military sexual slavery. The move comes amid Tokyo's continued denials of its past wrongdoing. Japanese media outlets recently quoted Japan's senior vice minister of education, Yoshitaka Sakurada, as saying that a 1993 apology for the sexual slavery system was fabricated, while calling for a re-examination of the supporting testimony. The Kono statement is an official apology issued by Tokyo's then Chief Cabinet Secretary Yohei Kono to apologize for the atrocities Japan committed during its imperialist past. Tokyo's right-wing Liberal Democratic Party said those who were foreign ministry officials at the time should be summoned regarding the testimony. The LDP also said it will start a petition to call for a revision of the statement. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Korea's nominee for central bank governor Lee Ju-yeol, who is expected to take the post on April 1st, has set his vision to communicate more fully with the market. Arirang's Hwang Ji-hye has more on the BOK veteran's vision and some of the challenges he'll face ahead.
The nominee for the Bank of Korea's next governor, Lee Ju-yeol, says he fully acknowledges the importance of communicating with the market. During a phone interview with the Korean daily Joseonilbo on Monday, he said that the central bank has to gain the trust of the people. He went on to say that the central bank has to focus not just on the numbers, but should look for ways to be in harmony with the actual economic sentiment. Back in 2009, when Lee was sworn in as the senior deputy governor, he pledged to focus on boosting economic growth by working closely with the government. Whether Lee's perception of the economy remains intact is unknown, but the veteran central bank official is considered to be neutral when it comes to monetary policy. The presidential office spokesperson said that Lee has a profound knowledge of the central bank's business and has a good sense of the international financial market. Lee started work at the central bank in 1977 and has held key positions through the years, including as the head of the research department. Once he takes office next month, experts say that he will be preoccupied with matters such as how to weather the impact of the U.S. Federal Reserve's tapering of its monetary stimulus program. The nation's snowballing household debt will also be a concern.
Lee will have to think deeply in terms of monetary policy about how to counteract the real estate and household debt problems that are growing as major threats to the Korean economy.
The National Assembly will hold a confirmation hearing for Lee within the next 3 weeks. The lawmakers do not, however, have the power to veto the appointment. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Well, speaking of household debt, the government last week announced a set of measures to curb the debt burden and to free up disposable income.
And for more on what those measures are and whether they will prove sufficient and effective, we bring in Dr. Oh Jung-gun, President of Asia Finance Society, in the studio. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, Professor, over the past 5 years, we've seen a very rapid rise in household debt, about a 40% increase. We've crossed the $1 quadrillion mark, or we're nearly at $1 trillion of household debt in the nation. What were some of the main drivers for this growth?
Well, I think we have two main causes of the household debt. The first one is the housing market, and second one is Korean stagnation of the income growth. As for the housing market, during the last 7 or 8 years, Korean housing market has stagnated so long time. Therefore, about the homeowners who borrowed money to buy house 7 or 8 years ago couldn't sell their home and couldn't repay their housing loan. And also the recently, in particular since 2008 crisis, Korean unique rental system we call 전세, so that is the lump sum deposit system. Amount of lump sum deposit has increased substantially during the last few years. Therefore, in particular, young generation have no choice but borrow money to finance lump sum deposit.
Right, and to tackle this chronic problem, the government laid out a package of measures last week. Can you walk us through some of the key policies that stand out, and are they any different from the previous ones?
Well, due to the skyrocketing household debt, the debt-to-income ratio has increased so high to the more than 160. That was much higher than even American one. Korean government recently announced two main policy measures. First one is to improve structural soundness of the household debt. That means to change from the short-term floating rate system to long-term fixed income, long-term fixed rate system, and also the monthly installment system. And second one is secondary. Korean government plan to reduce income burden, in particular to low-income bracket household.
So on the other side of that equation of the debt-to-income ratio, another solution would be to raise income. So especially with the stagnating incomes for the past few years, do you think that that's actually like a feasible way to go? Do incomes need to rise? Actually,
Korean growth rate was more than 5%. But recently, Korean economic growth rate declined to about 2 or 3%. That's why debt-to-income ratio has increased continuously. So, as you mentioned, one of the best solution to reduce the debt-to-income ratio is to raise our income. That means to boost our economic growth. That is the best solution.
Dr. Oh, before we let you go, will the latest measures prove to be effective? And if not, what more can the government and financial regulators do to put this deteriorating problem under control?
Recently, government are thinking whether to deregulate DTI or LTV ratio more because of because with the help of boosting housing market, homeowners who borrowed money 7 or 8 years ago could sell their home and then could repay their household debt.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your insight tonight.
Thank you.
The tension in Ukraine could be easing as Russian President Vladimir Putin in a news conference said Moscow has no plans to annex Ukraine's Crimea region.
In fact, hours earlier, the Russian leader ordered troops involved in a military exercise in western Russia back to base. Our Kim Hyun-bin has the latest on Ukraine crisis.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says he has no plans to send Russian troops into Ukraine, but at the same time says he hasn't ruled out the possibility entirely. That was just one of many messages Putin delivered at a news conference Tuesday evening, fielding questions on the situation in Ukraine from reporters. He defended his actions and pointed the finger at the West, noting that Russian forces have not fired a single shot since they were dispatched to Crimea. Putin called out the leaders of the U.S. and other Western powers as being hypocritical in their condemnations, specifically mentioning the United States interventions in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya. He said all came without a UN resolution authorizing the action. As for the leadership of Ukraine, he said the interim government was a result of a coup and that the current parliament is partly legitimate, while the country's acting president is not. He went so far as to say that militants have sent the country into chaos and that Ukrainian nationalists and anti-Semites were walking the street of Kyiv and other cities. Putin also voiced support for ousted Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych. The Russian leader said Yanukovych told him he had not given orders to shoot demonstrators. The news conference came just a few hours after President Putin ordered 150,000 troops taking part in military exercises near the Ukrainian border to return to their bases within 48 hours. Presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov made the announcement Tuesday, calling the exercises a success. The surprise military drills in the Central and Western Territorial Commands were launched last Wednesday as tensions rose in Ukraine. The withdrawal comes after the European Union condemned the drills as an aggression and threatened Russia with sanctions if the troops did not return to their bases by Thursday. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
And despite positive signs out of Ukraine and global stock markets turning around, the unrest in that region did spook investors around the world.
Russia's stock market and currency tumbled to levels unseen in recent years, while other international markets were also affected. Song Ji-sun has the figures.
Western leaders are threatening Russian President Vladimir Putin with economic penalties for his military intervention in Crimea, but the financial system already appears to be punishing him. The Moscow stock market suffered its biggest plunge in 5 years on Monday, with the benchmark MYSEX losing 11% before recouping some of its losses in Tuesday trading. The ruble also hit a new low on Monday, and Russia's central bank tried to contain the plunge by raising its key interest rate by 1.5 percentage point to 7%. It was the largest interest rate hike since the global financial crisis in 1998. Stocks in global markets stumbled across the board, with investors selling off shares, particularly in companies with exposure to Ukraine and Russia. The Dow Jones Industrial Average shed nearly 1% on Monday, but the European markets were hit harder, with the London benchmark Financial Times Stock Exchange ending the day 1.5% lower, and Paris and Frankfurt stocks losing 2.7% and 3.4% respectively. Stocks on the Ukraine exchange in Kiev fell about 12%, and the country's currency fell to a new low against the US dollar. Ukraine faces a possible default on its debt as Moscow is cutting off aid to its limping economy. In Asian markets, Seoul shares closed slightly lower on Tuesday after shedding nearly 1% on Monday, while Tokyo and Hong Kong shares rebounded on bargain hunting after losing more than 1% each on Monday. The uncertainties pushed oil prices higher, with Brent crude futures adding nearly 2% in London, and gold also gained over 2% to $1,350 an ounce to mark its biggest gain of the year. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
And staying with stories making headlines around the globe, from the latest developments in a deadly knife attack in China to Forbes' list of the world's richest billionaires, we connect live to Paul Lee in the News Center.
Well, Paul, let's start with the China knife massacre. Did the police capture the remaining suspects?
Well, China's Xinhua news agency says that the 3 remaining suspects involved in the attack at a railway station in southwestern China are now in custody. The Chinese public security minister said Tuesday that 6 men and 2 women were responsible for the stabbing spree Saturday that killed 30 people and injured over 140 others. Beijing says a separatist group from the far western region of Xinjiang, home to the Muslim Uyghur minority, is believed to have carried out the assault. Moving over to Egypt, the country's military leader, General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, has given his clearest indication yet that he will run for president. On Tuesday, at a graduation ceremony at the Cairo War College, al-Sisi said he could no longer ignore the demands of the so-called majority and that Egypt required the unity of the people, army, and police.
The will of the Egyptian people alone is what governs us. We respect it, we protect it with all objectivity, fairness, honor, and without deceit. Those who think they can stand against us or repel this will or counter it with violence are wrong. And we are totally responsible for protecting the will of these great people.
Al-Sisi added that official procedures concerning his candidacy were expected in the coming days. He's widely expected to win. And Forbes magazine has released its annual list of the world's richest people. Bill Gates reclaimed the top spot for 2014 with a net worth of $76 billion. This despite giving away billions to charity in recent years. The co-founder of Microsoft stepped down as chairman last month to fill the role of technology advisor while continuing philanthropic efforts with his global foundation. Mexican telecommunications mogul Carlos Slim came in second place with $72 billion, followed by Spanish clothing conglomerate founder Amancio Ortega. Some of Korea's most powerful industry leaders also made the cut. Samsung's legendary chairman Lee Gun-hee ranked 102nd place with a net worth of about $11 billion. His only son, JYE, came at $4.5 billion after being named the vice chairman of the group last year, while the chief of Hyundai Motor broke in at 202nd place. That wraps up our look at international stories making headlines. I'll see you back here again tomorrow night.
We've been enjoying higher than seasonal average temperatures for a while now, but I understand things are about to change.
That's right. For more, let's turn things over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung.
Good evening, guys. Well, don't get too used to this warm weather because we are in for a cold snap starting tomorrow afternoon through the rest of the week. Through Wednesday, the mountains of Jeju are forecast to get 1 to 5 centimeters of snow, and if you're in Gangwon-do province, you can see between 5 to 20 centimeters of snow. Currently, Jeju and the southern regions are under the influence of a low-pressure trough. This is why those regions are seeing sporadic showers or snow in some cases. We'll find these levels in most parts of the central regions are now back to normal. However, Seoul is seeing slightly higher levels, but that will clear out by tomorrow morning. Moving on to Wednesday's numbers, Seoul's daytime high reaches 6 degrees, which is about 5 degrees lower than today. Meanwhile, Daegu and Busan hit the low teens. Moving on to other regions, Daejeon and Dokdo top out at 6 degrees, while Mount Kumgang peaks at 1. Well, that's all the weather update for now, and I'll be back with more updates after midnight.
Hello and welcome to Primetime Sports. I'm Stephen Che. Now, starting off here in Seoul, the Queen of the Ice, Kim Yeon-ah, has put the, quote, absurd Olympics figure skating result behind her and is ready to move on. Meeting with hundreds of fans at a mall, Kim said she never once went over the results and that she's happy it's all over. Controversy erupted at the Sochi Winter Games as Russian teen Adelina Sotnikova outscored and upset the defending Olympic champion despite flaws in her free skate program. And as for her future plans, the 23-year-old Kim made it clear that she has put down her skates for good and that she has no regrets. Well, with 2 world championships, an Olympic gold, and multiple records in the bag, she certainly has much to be proud of. And as sad as it is to see the figure skating queen retire, she'll definitely lend a hand for the next Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang. And speaking of that, preparations for the 2018 Games are fast underway. In the latest, a groundbreaking ceremony was held for the sliding center at the Alpensia Resort. The venue, slated to be completed in 2017, will host events for the bobsleigh, skeleton, and luge. In his speech, Gangwon-do Province Governor Choi Mun-sun boasted that there were only 16 such facilities in the world and that this sliding center would be a standout from the bunch. And now going over to the NBA, 4-time league MVP LeBron James has reached yet another milestone 11 years into his legendary career. Scoring 61 points on 67% shooting with 8 3-pointers in tow, he led the Miami Heat to a 124-107 victory over the hapless Charlotte Bobcats. And with that, he shattered not only his personal points record of 56 points set in 2005 with Cleveland, but also the Heat record of 56 set by Glenn Rice back in 1995. Now heading to the Korean Basketball League, we have a doubleheader. In the first game, the Orions beat KGC 80-71. But now let's talk about the game of the night. It's the KCC Aegis hosting the ET Land Elephants in Jeonju. Now the visitors hit their stride in the first quarter and take a huge 16-point lead into the half. But KCC makes a furious comeback as Kim Min-gu catches heat and forces OT with a 3 at the end of regulation. Now it's bonus ball. The momentum is with KCC, and they bang out the clutch win, 91-83. Now it's pro volleyball in the V-League. Samsung Hwajae faced off against Uricard in Daejeon. Now Samsung, the top team in the league, set the pace by dominating the first set and winning the second set as well. Uricard strikes back, taking the third, but a couple of unforced errors do them in as Samsung recaptures the fourth and gets the win 3-1. And that's all I have for now. This has been Stephen Che. I'll see you back here later for more from the world of sports.
All right, thanks, Stephen. And that's a broadcast on this Tuesday night. I'm Yoo Li-an, Seoul.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.